You sit down at a small local restaurant in Vietnam. The menu has no English. A plate of herbs arrives before your food. There are 3 sauces on the table, chopsticks in front of you, and you are not completely sure what you ordered. Then the meal arrives. It looks incredible, but should you mix everything together? Which sauce should you use, and what did the server just place beside your bowl? Vietnamese food can become one of the best parts of your trip, but your first local meal can also be confusing. In this video, I'll show you what to order, how to eat it, and how to enjoy Vietnamese food without feeling completely lost. For many first-time visitors, Vietnamese food begins with 2 names, pho and banh mi. Both are worth trying, but they are only the entrance to a much larger food culture. Vietnamese meals change from north to south. A bowl that tastes light and balanced in Hanoi may become sweeter and more herb-heavy in southern Vietnam. A dish in central Vietnam may be smaller, saltier, spicier, or more intense. The same name can even describe different versions depending on the city. Food in Vietnam is also deeply connected to time and place. Some dishes are mainly eaten in the morning, some restaurants specialize in only one dish, some food stalls disappear before lunch, and some of the best meals are served in places that do not look like restaurants at all. This guide is not about finding the most famous dish on social media. It is about helping you walk into a real Vietnamese food experience, understand what is happening, and order with confidence. By the end of this video, you will know how to read the most useful
Hello,
words on a
have some
Vietnamese
lunch?
menu,
Looks
what to
delicious.
expect
Maybe
when
later.
herbs and sauces arrive, which dishes are easiest for beginners, how food changes between northern, central, and southern Vietnam, how to choose between street food, markets, and restaurants,
Everything smells
how
so
to communicate
incredible.
dietary restrictions,
I think
and
I
how
found
to
my dinner
avoid
spot.
turning a great meal into an uncomfortable travel day. Imagine walking through a Vietnamese neighborhood early in the morning. Motorbikes are passing. Metal shutters are opening. Steam rises from large pots near the sidewalk. People sit on small stools, eating quickly before work. You see a busy restaurant with one main dish displayed on the sign. This is often a good place to begin. Many local restaurants in Vietnam do not have large menus. They may specialize in one dish with only a few variations. A Phay O restaurant may offer different cuts of beef or chicken. A Gom Tom restaurant may offer different grilled meats and side dishes. A Banch Quan shop may serve one basic plate with several optional additions. This can actually make ordering easier. Instead of choosing from 50 unfamiliar items, you only need to understand the main dish and the available variations. When you enter, do not wait for the experience to follow the exact pattern of a Western restaurant. You may be seated immediately, you may order before sitting down, you may point to a dish, a server may ask a short question that you do not understand, and sometimes your food may arrive before your drink. The process can feel fast, informal, and slightly chaotic. That does not necessarily mean anything is wrong. Watch what other customers are doing. Notice where they sit. See whether they pay at the table or near the entrance. Look at what is placed beside each bowl. In many local restaurants, observing for 10 seconds can answer questions that no travel guide explains. You do not need to learn Vietnamese before your trip, but a few food words can make local menus much easier to understand. Let's begin with common proteins. Bo means beef, ga means chicken, heo or thit heo means pork, ka means fish, tom means shrimp, trung means egg, che usually means vegetarian. Now look at the type of dish. Korm means rice. Bun usually refers to round rice noodles. Pho refers to the flat rice noodles used in pho. Mi generally means wheat or egg noodles. Chow means rice porridge. Bang can refer to many different foods made from flour, rice, or starch. It does not simply mean bread or cake. Bang mi is a bread sandwich. Bong shou is a crispy savory pancake. Bong kun is made from thin steamed rice sheets. The word changes meaning depending on the complete dish name. You may also see preparation words. Nung means grilled, chin means fried. Zao out means stir-fried. Hep means steamed. Ko usually means braised or simmered in a seasoned sauce. Luok means boiled. Nong means hot. Da means ice. K means spicy. Khong K means not spicy. Khong Durng means no sugar. Eat Durng means less sugar. The pronunciation does not need to be perfect. You can also show the written phrase on your phone. A small number of useful words can turn a confusing menu into something recognizable. Your food arrives, then another plate appears. It contains lettuce, basil, mint, bean sprouts, sliced vegetables or herbs you may not recognize. For many visitors, this is the moment when the meal becomes confusing. Are the herbs decoration? Should they go inside the soup? Do you eat them separately? The answer depends on the dish. Vietnamese meals often use fresh herbs to add texture, fragrance, and contrast. Some are added directly to a bowl, some are wrapped with meat and noodles, some are eaten between bites. Some are used only if you enjoy their flavor. You're not always expected to use everything. With pho, you may add herbs, bean sprouts, lime, or chili according to your preference, but regional styles differ. In some northern pho restaurants, the bowl may arrive with fewer herbs because the broth itself is intended to remain the main focus. In southern Vietnam, you may receive a much larger plate of herbs and sprouts. With banh gieo, you often take a piece of the crispy pancake, add herbs, wrap it in lettuce or rice paper, and dip it into sauce. With bun cha, grilled pork, noodles, herbs, and dipping broth are combined bite by bite. The easiest rule is this: do not mix everything immediately. Pause, look at the table, watch how someone nearby eats the same dish. Then try a small amount. You can always add more herbs, chili, or sauce. You cannot easily remove them once everything is mixed together. Vietnamese tables often contain several condiments: fish sauce, chili sauce, soy sauce, fresh chili, pickled garlic, lime, sometimes a darker sauce, sometimes a small bowl prepared specifically for your dish. The first mistake is assuming every sauce should be added directly to the bowl. Some sauces are for dipping, some are for seasoning. Some are already part of the recipe, and some are extremely strong. Taste your food before adding anything. A well-made broth may already be balanced. Adding a large amount of sauce immediately can cover the flavor the cook intended. With pho, begin with the broth, then decide whether you want lime, chili, or another condiment. With grilled meat and rice, sauce may be poured over the rice or used as a dip. With spring rolls, the sauce is usually for dipping. With banh xiao, the dipping sauce is part of each wrapped bite. You do not need to use every bottle on the table. And you do not need to prove that you can handle the hottest chili. Vietnamese chili can be much stronger than it appears. Start with a small amount. Your meal should be memorable because it tasted good, not because you lost the ability to taste anything else. Let's begin the regional food journey in Hanoi. Morning is one of the best times to experience the city's food culture. A simple first breakfast is pho. Pho is a noodle soup built around broth, flat rice noodles, herbs, and meat. The most common versions are pho bo with beef and pho ga with chicken, but even one bowl of beef pho may have several options. You may see rare beef, well-done beef, brisket, tendon, beef, meatballs, or combinations. For a first bowl, choose a simple version. Pho bo thai usually includes thin slices of beef that cook in the hot broth. Pho bo chin uses cooked beef. Pho ga is often an approachable option for travelers who prefer chicken. Taste the broth first, then add lime, herbs, or chili gradually. Do not automatically cover the entire surface with sauce. Bun cha. Later in Hanoi, try bun cha. This dish combines grilled pork, rice noodles, herbs, and a warm dipping broth. The components often arrive separately. Take some noodles, add herbs, pick up a piece of pork, dip, or combine them in the bowl. There is no need to construct a perfect bite. The balance develops as you move between smoky pork, fresh herbs, noodles, and the slightly sweet savory dipping liquid, banh quang. Another gentle introduction is banh cuon. Thin steamed rice sheets are usually filled with seasoned pork and mushrooms. They may be served with herbs, fried shallots, sausage, and dipping sauce. The texture is soft and delicate. It is a useful option when you want something lighter than grilled meat or a large noodle soup, egg coffee. Hanoi's egg coffee is part drink and part dessert. A thick, sweet egg mixture sits over strong Vietnamese coffee. Stir gently or taste the layers separately. It is rich. You probably do not need to order the largest size. As you travel south into central Vietnam, the flavor profile often changes. Dishes may feel bolder. Chili may become more prominent. Portions can be smaller, but the flavor may be more concentrated. Bun bo hue is a noodle soup associated with hue. It usually has round rice noodles, a rich broth, beef, and herbs. Depending on the restaurant, it may also include pork, sausage, or other ingredients. The broth can be spicy. Do not assume every bowl is extremely hot, but ask before ordering if you are sensitive to chili. The phrase "kong kei" can help. However, the base broth may already contain some spice, so not spicy may mean no extra chili rather than completely mild. Mi Quang is strongly associated with Central Vietnam. It uses wide noodles, a smaller amount of concentrated broth, herbs, peanuts, rice crackers, and different proteins. Do not expect it to look like a full bowl of soup. The liquid is usually part of the dish, but not the entire dish. Mix the noodles gently with the herbs and toppings, break some of the rice cracker into the bowl if that is how it is served locally. The result combines soft noodles, crunchy textures, herbs, and rich seasoning. Cao Lo. In Hoi An, Cao Lo is one of the most recognizable local dishes. It usually includes thick noodles, sliced pork, greens, herbs, and crispy elements. The bowl contains little liquid. It is not a normal noodle soup. Mix the ingredients enough to distribute the sauce, but keep some of the crisp texture. Bang Xiao. Bang Xiao is a crispy, savory pancake made with rice batter. It may contain pork, shrimp, bean sprouts, or other fillings. The style and size differ between regions. Central versions are often smaller than southern versions. The pancake is usually cut into pieces, wrapped with herbs, and dipped into sauce. Trying to pick up an entire pancake with chopsticks is not the easiest approach. Use the vegetables and rice paper as part of the experience. This is a meal where using your hands may be completely normal. In southern Vietnam, food often becomes more abundant and flexible. You may notice more herbs, more sauces, more sweetness, and larger combinations of toppings. Cum tem means broken rice. It is one of the most practical first meals in Ho Chi Minh City. A common plate includes grilled pork, rice, pickled vegetables, cucumber, and fish sauce. You may also add a fried egg, shredded pork skin, or steamed egg cake. For a simple order, choose grilled pork with rice and egg. Pour a small amount of the sauce over the rice, then add more if needed. The sauce can be salty, sweet, and strong. Hủ tieu is a southern noodle dish with many variations. It may be served with broth or dry, with broth on the side. It can include pork, shrimp, seafood, or other toppings. If the menu offers nuke, that usually indicates the soup version. Co may indicate the dry version. The dry version is not dry in the literal sense. The noodles are dressed with sauce, and a separate bowl of broth may be served alongside. Banh mi is one of the easiest foods for a first-time visitor, but not every banh mi is the same. Some use cold cuts and pate. Some use grilled pork, some use chicken, some use eggs, some are vegetarian. The sandwich may also contain cucumber, pickled vegetables, herbs, chili, and sauce. To reduce spice, say kong kei. To remove one ingredient, showing a translation on your phone is often more reliable than trying to improvise the pronunciation. Banh mi is convenient, but it is not always a complete food guide to Vietnam. Use it as one meal, not every meal. Southern bang geo. Southern bang sheo is often larger and thinner than central versions. It may contain more bean sprouts and have a wider, crisp outer shell. The eating method is similar. Break off a section, add herbs, wrap it, dip it, except that the first attempt may fall apart. That is part of the experience. Visitors often ask, is street food safe? There is no simple answer that applies to every stall. Street food is not automatically unsafe. A restaurant is not automatically safe simply because it has walls and air conditioning. Use practical observation. Look for food that is being cooked fresh. Notice whether ingredients appear properly stored. Check whether raw food is separated from cooked food. Observe whether utensils and preparation areas look reasonably clean. Choose places with steady turnover rather than food that appears to have been sitting for a long time. Busy places can be a useful sign of fresh turnover, but crowds alone are not a guarantee. Trust what you can see. If something smells wrong, looks poorly stored, or makes you uncomfortable, leave. There's always another meal nearby. Markets are excellent for seeing many foods in one place, but they can also feel overwhelming. Begin with one cooked dish rather than sampling 5 unfamiliar foods immediately. Restaurants with English menus may be easier for the first day. Then, as you become more comfortable, move towards smaller local restaurants and markets. The goal is not to prove that you are adventurous. The goal is to enjoy the food and continue enjoying the trip the next day. Vietnamese food may feel lighter than some Western cuisines, but a full day of eating can still become physically demanding. A traveler may begin with pho, then drink strong sweet coffee, then try street snacks, then eat spicy noodles, then have grilled seafood, then finish with dessert. The problem is not necessarily one dish. The problem is combining too many unfamiliar foods, large amounts of sugar, chili, and caffeine in one day. Give your body time to adjust. Begin with cooked foods and familiar proteins. Try one or two new things at a time. Drink enough water. And do not schedule your most adventurous food experience immediately before a long bus ride, flight, or mountain road transfer. A great food day should have space between meals. Vietnam is not going to run out of food before your trip ends. Food allergies require more preparation than simply learning the name of one ingredient. Sauces, broths, and marinades may contain ingredients that are not visible. Peanuts may appear as a topping. Fish sauce may be used in dipping sauces, soups, and marinades. Shellfish may be part of a broth even when it is not clearly visible in the final dish. If you have a serious allergy, prepare a clear written translation before the trip. The message should explain which ingredient you cannot eat, that even a small amount can be dangerous, and whether cross contact is a concern. Show the message before ordering. Do not rely only on verbal pronunciation. For vegetarian travelers, che is the most useful word. A dedicated vegetarian restaurant may be easier than trying to modify a meat-based dish. Remember that a dish without visible meat may still use meat broth or fish sauce. Ask clearly, and when communication is uncertain, choose the safer option. A menu without English does not mean you cannot eat there. You have several options. Point to a photo, point to another customer's dish politely. Use a translation application, show the name of the dish on your phone, or ask for the restaurant's most popular option. One simple phrase is, Mot fern ne. This means one portion of this. You can point while saying it. You may also hear the server ask about size. Lone means large. Nor means small. Some restaurants ask whether you want certain ingredients. When you do not understand, stay calm. Use your phone. Smile. Point food ordering does not need to become a language examination. Most communication problems can be solved visually. Before confirming, check quantity. A price may apply to one piece, one plate, one person, or a measured amount. This is especially important for seafood and market food sold by weight. Ask the total price before ordering when the pricing system is unclear. You do not need perfect chopstick technique to eat in Vietnam. Most noodle soups come with both chopsticks and a spoon. Use the chopsticks for noodles and solid ingredients. Use the spoon for broth. You can bring a smaller portion of noodles onto the spoon if that makes the first bite easier. For rice dishes, chopsticks are common, but a spoon may also be available. For wrapped foods, rolls, and some pancakes, using your hands can be normal. Follow the structure of the dish instead of forcing every food into one eating style. Avoid placing chopsticks upright in a bowl of rice. When pausing, place them across the bowl or on the available holder. Do not use them to point at people. And do not worry if your technique is slower than everyone else's. Local diners are there to eat, not to judge your chopstick performance. Vietnamese coffee can be much stronger and sweeter than first-time visitors expect. A traditional drip coffee may take several minutes to prepare. Café Soda is iced coffee with condensed milk. It is sweet, strong, and popular in southern Vietnam. Café Den Da is iced black coffee, but it may still include sugar depending on the shop. Ask for less sugar with It Dung. For no sugar, use Hong Dung. Vietnam also has coconut coffee, salt coffee, egg coffee, and many modern variations. Try them as desserts or experiences, not necessarily as hydration. One strong Vietnamese coffee late in the day can affect travelers who are sensitive to caffeine. Fresh fruit drinks and sugarcane juice are also widely available. They may contain more sugar than expected. Again, It Dung can help. For drinking water, use sealed bottled water or properly filtered water provided by a trusted accommodation or restaurant. Carry water during long sightseeing days, especially in hot and humid weather. Payment style depends on the restaurant. At a small local shop, you may pay near the entrance. At a larger restaurant, staff may bring the bill to your table. Some places accept cards. Many small food stalls prefer cash. Mobile payments are common locally, but they may require a Vietnamese banking application that foreign visitors do not have. Carry smaller cash notes for inexpensive meals. Before leaving, confirm that all items on the bill belong to your table. Tipping is not required in every situation. At a casual food stall or small local restaurant, tipping is generally not expected. At higher-end restaurants, check whether a service charge has already been included. For excellent service, leaving a modest tip is appreciated, but it is not necessary to copy the tipping percentages common in the United States or Canada. Do not allow uncertainty about tipping to make the meal uncomfortable. Pay the stated price. Tip when appropriate, then continue your day. Here is a simple first food day in Vietnam. Breakfast begin with pho ga, pho bo, or banh quan. Choose a busy local restaurant with clearly cooked food and steady customer turnover. Taste the dish before adding sauces. Mid-morning, try one Vietnamese coffee, order a smaller size if you're sensitive to caffeine or sweetness. Lunch, choose a rice dish such as com tem or a noodle dish such as mi quang depending on the region. This is a good time to practice using herbs and dipping sauce. Afternoon, try one light snack or a fresh fruit drink. Do not sample everything you see. Dinner, choose a dish designed to be shared or assembled at the table. Bung she, bun cha, grilled meat, or a family-style meal can become a more social experience. This first day structure introduces soup, rice, noodles, herbs, sauce, coffee, and shared food, but it does not overwhelm your body with 15 new ingredients at once. Let's simplify the regional choices. Hanoi and Northern Vietnam. Start with pho bun cha, banh quan, and egg coffee. These dishes introduce broth, grilled meat, herbs, noodles, and coffee without requiring an extremely spicy meal. Hue and Central Vietnam. Start with bun bo hue, mi quang, and smaller central-style bang show. Ask about spice before ordering. Hoi an, try, cao lo, mi quang bang mi, and local wrapped dishes. Hoi An is particularly accessible because many restaurants are used to international visitors. Ho Chi Minh City. Start with com tem, hu tieu banh mi, pho, and southern-style bang xiu. The city offers everything from simple street stalls to modern restaurants. Mekong Delta look for fresh fruit, noodle soups, grilled fish, rice dishes, and regional specialties made with local produce. Do not assume every unusual food must be tried. Choose based on interest, not pressure. The first mistake is adding every sauce before tasting the food. The second is assuming every plate of herbs must go into the bowl. The third is ordering the spiciest version to appear adventurous. The fourth is trying too many unfamiliar dishes in one day. The fifth is choosing food only because it looks dramatic on social media. The sixth is ignoring price by weight when ordering seafood. The seventh is failing to communicate serious allergies clearly. The eighth is assuming a restaurant with an English menu is always better. And the ninth is eating every meal in the most tourist-heavy area because it feels easier. Convenience is useful, but walk one or two streets away. Look for places where local residents are eating. Begin with dishes you recognize, then gradually explore. The best food experience is not necessarily the most extreme, it is the one that helps you understand the place you're visiting. Let's simplify the entire guide. Begin with a restaurant that specializes in one main dish. Learn a few useful words. Bo, ga, heo, ka, che. Korm, bun, nung, and ke. Taste your food before adding sauce. Use herbs gradually. Watch how the dish is eaten before mixing everything together. In northern Vietnam, begin with pho, bun cha, and bang quan. In central Vietnam, expect stronger flavors and ask about spice. In southern Vietnam, expect more herbs, sauce, sweetness, and variety. Choose food that is cooked fresh and stored properly. Introduce unfamiliar dishes gradually. Prepare a written translation for serious allergies. Carry small cash notes. Do not worry about perfect chopstick technique. And remember, Vietnamese food is not a challenge you need to complete. It is a journey you can enjoy one meal at a time. Your first Vietnamese meal may feel confusing, but by the third or fourth day, the things that felt unfamiliar begin to make sense. You recognize the herbs, you understand the sauces, you know how to order, and you begin looking forward to the small restaurant that serves only one dish. That is when food becomes more than something you eat during the trip, it becomes part of how you remember Vietnam. Subscribe to Real Talk Vietnam for practical, honest, and step-by-step guides for your